Hello, this is the Provoked Prawn, and I'm a bit late to this party, but this is the glorious Model O wireless in matte black. This is an unboxing and review video where I'm going to be talking to you about the various features of this gaming mouse, as well as covering the software and the specs and a number of other things that make it interesting. Now, this mouse is comparable with the SteelSeries Aerox 3, and I'm going to do a video separately to talk about the differences between those two. And that's partly because glorious Model O has inspired a number of other honeycomb design lightweight gaming mice from a number of different companies and brands that have put out similar mice. And there's been a number of them from all over the place in recent times, and that's because this design is very popular, and also everyone's trying to make their mouse as lightweight as possible. Now, the glorious Model O weighs in at 69 grams, but that isn't the only thing that makes it interesting. It also has a number of nice specs that include 400 IPS Max tracking speed, 50G acceleration, 19,000 DPI, 6 programmable buttons, up to 70 hours of battery life, and a low latency 2.4 gigahertz wireless connection. Now, inside the box you get the mouse itself. It's worth noting there is a matte black version, this is it here, and there's also a matte white version. Now, I tested the matte white version of the wired glorious Model O, and I'll show them side by side at the end of this video in case you're curious as to what they're like and what the differences are. And the white one is certainly the better looking of the two, but there's something certainly nice about the black variant in as well. It has a nice matte finish to it, which means it sits nicely in the hand and it looks kind of stealthy until the Rgb lighting comes on. Also inside the box you get this little extension dongle and the USB wireless dongle as well. Those essentially plug into your PC via USB-C cable, or you can plug the dongle straight into your PC. That basically allows for easy access to the USB-C charging cable, which you can see here. Now, this is a flexible USB-C charging cable, which has a very floppy design to it. It basically flops all over the place, which means it doesn't tug and it isn't a problem. It's very easy to use and has a nice finish to it. That's the Ascend ultra flexible USB-C cable, so it's glorious own special cable. Also in the box is a little quick start reference guide, and a highlight of that is it talks to you about the DPI levels. Now, the software allows you to customize the DPI in various different levels, and you can download the glorious core software, which I'll talk to you about a bit later on. There are 4 DPI levels as standard, set up as default as 400, 800, 1600 and 3200, and there's an indicator light on the underneath which lets you know what stage you're at. You can also adjust the lift-off distance and the debounce time and the polling rate all within the software, as well as the key bindings for the 6 programmable buttons, and I'll cover more on that at the end when I discuss the software and show you what's possible. So as you see, a fairly understated, it's straightforward setup process, but there are some niggles, and one of them is actually the USB cable. I think it's a very nice flexible cable and it's satisfying in that way, but one niggle of it is when you plug it in, you discover that it only plugs in one way. It has this pronged affair to it that you can see. It kind of reminds me of Logitech's charging cables, but if you try to plug it in with that honeycomb marker on the underside, you'll find it doesn't actually plug in properly, and you need to plug it in the other way around. This kind of defeats the point of a USB-C charging cable in my mind, where micro USB can only plug in one direction. Usually USB-C you can plug in whichever way you want, but now they've made it so you can't do it, which seems like a very odd design choice. I'm not sure why they've done that. Very strange. You also have some large PTFE feet on the underside. These are the G-skate feet, which basically allow it to glide around nicely. So as well as being lightweight, it's designed to move smooth and fast on your desk too. It's worth noting that the Model O is designed with a ambidextrous shape. But actually, you'll note there's thumb buttons on the left-hand side, but not on the right. So if you are left-handed, then you're obviously going to miss out on some of the buttons and be a bit awkward. But it is also for medium to large hands, and I must say, I've got fairly large hands, and I find it's a comfortable fit, and you get a good grip on it as well, thanks to that matte texture. Now, the little extender dongle has a rubberized finish on the underside, which means that it can sit on the desk but won't move around too much, which is nice. The USB dongle also pops out of that, and you can plug it into your PC, or you plug it into that and then plug the USB-C charging cables into the other side of it, so you can extend the range but also keep the charging cable within easy reach. So you can just unplug it from the back of the extension dongle and then plug it into your mouse when you need to charge. As I said, 70 hours of battery life. I do feel like I haven't got 70 hours of battery life out of it, but that's because, as usual, that's with RGB lighting turned off, where they make that claim. So I tend to find I have the RGB lighting on because it's fairly nice with it on. What you'll see is that without it, it's quite understated, quite stealthy looking. You will note the USB-C charging cable problem comes into the dongle as well, not just the mouse itself. So that's a real pain, a very silly one to have, a very silly issue. But a close-up number of views of the mouse and you'll see some really nice design accents, including that glorious logo on the side. Now on the underside, you can see what I was talking about. I'm pressing the DPI switching button on the top and you'll see the DPI level indicator on the underside changing between those to let you know what level it's at. So yellow is 400, blue 800, red 1600, green 3200, but you can customize that within the software, and again I'll show you that later on. The mouse itself has some very satisfying clicks and there's no excessive play in it. I didn't feel it was a wobble. One of the problems I had with the wired version was I found that the mouse is quite noisy, and when you moved it around there was something inside that was like shaking and making a noise. Not had that problem with this one. Actually find it quiet and satisfying to use. There is no sideways click in the mouse wheel, but you will note that it does have a nice deep texture to it, so it's satisfying and it clicks in nicely as well, just like the other buttons. The overall matte texture finish of it as well means it just doesn't slip around in the hand. So for fast-paced gaming, if you get quite clammy hands, as I do, unfortunately, this is actually a very good choice. Downside of that is that honeycomb texture is obviously going to lead to some dirt and dust ingress and build up over time. Should be easy enough to clean with some compressed air, but there are some bits of it where there's going to be some very awkward build up of dirt and dust, and you'll probably see that on the top side more than the bottom, mostly because not the entire area is honeycomb all the way through. You can see there's a strut through the middle, for example, where dirt could get into that honeycomb section and then it won't be easily blown out. This is a long-term problem rather than a short-term one, and it might not even be an issue. It's hard to test these things, but the mouse itself has been very nice to use for gaming sessions. I've been using it all day for work and then gaming at night too, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It's one of my favorite gaming mice of late, I think, and I've tested quite a few wireless lightweight gaming mice recently. And I must say that the Aerox 3 possibly wins out because it has Bluetooth as well, and I believe it has more battery life, and I'll cover that off a bit more in the comparison video. But there's a lot to be said for this one. Now, the Model O isn't the lightest mouse around anymore either. There are a few that are lighter, and so it doesn't have the same features or the same weight, but it is still a very nice mouse and well worth considering. And not terribly expensive depending on where you are in the world. It's not the most expensive mouse I've seen, and yet it offers up a number of really nice design features and really good specs and a comfortable fit in the hand too, and an overall nice aesthetic. I really like the design of the logo on the side. The RGB lighting, you have the zones on either side on the mouse wheel, and you can see from the footage here the little bit of light bleed on the inside as well. You can see either side's RGB lighting shining through. Now here you can see it alongside the white wired version. You will see what I was saying. The white one is much nicer. My wife has actually been using the white one for quite a while now, since I reviewed it originally. I donated it to her and she's been using it daily. And actually you can see that it still looks fantastic. She's not a filthy animal like me, but it's still a very clean mouse in good condition and looks really nice. I think the white one is a much nicer looking mouse, but they are both matte finish. They both have that rough texture finish to them, but the wireless is quieter, so I found there was a rattle in mine. Now I don't know if it was a defective model or if that's a common problem with the wired, but I will note it still because I think it's worth noting. The wireless one doesn't have a problem. It is quiet and stealthy. Now come with me into the software as to show off what's possible in there. And here we are within the glorious core software, which looks like this as default, where you basically can see the mouse. You'll note on the left hand side you can see the battery life. You can also see that from here. You'll also see that you have access to different profile settings that you can set up within this software, and then you can just click on the mouse on this side and you then have access to import and export your profiles, so you can save them, put them elsewhere. You also then have simple access to the various settings. It's a very straightforward piece of software, pretty simple to use. So we'll start with lighting. You'll see there are a number of different effects you can choose from. It is on seamless breathing RGB at the moment, which is probably one of the nicer ones. Glorious mode is what you saw in the video for the most part, just our rainbow effect. Not really a big fan of that. Breathing with a variety of different color options to choose from. You'll note there's different wired and wireless brightness levels, so you can set it to be a dimmer when on wireless mode, and that's obviously going to help you save battery life. And then you can maximize your brightness when it's plugged in, which is a nice option. You can also choose from a single color and go anywhere on the palette. That's a nice bit of blue. I do enjoy blue. Then you have breathing single color, tail, which basically goes through. And now on the software, this makes it look quite like it's going in hard sections, but actually it flows quite nicely across the mouse instead. I think I showed this in the wired version if you're interested to see that a bit more. And then there's rave, which is a bit in your face, and you can turn it off if you don't like it. So if you want a really stealthy mouse, you can opt for that instead. Obviously doing that, turning it off, is going to increase that battery life, and you can make the most of getting that up to 70 hours of battery life out of it. Now there are 6 programmable buttons within the software, and it will note that left button is programmable as well, and you can program it to do other things. I foolishly clicked to set it to be the battery status check and then click save, and then I couldn't use my left button and I had to get another mouse and plug that in. So don't make that mistake unless you've got a spare mouse so you can change it. But it is interesting that you can reprogram it, and you will note that you have all the different combinations up here, so you can set it to do a single key press or any action from the keyboard. You can have a modifier on it. You could set up to paste using the DPI cycle button, for example, if you wanted to. Maybe we'll have this as a Windows function, so copying and pasting stuff regularly. You want to do that now. When I click that save button, I'm now accessing it via the DPI button, which is pretty nuts. So you can obviously do lots of different things. You can set up a variety of different mouse buttons in here, and one of the things is the battery status check. So when you click that, what happens is the mouse wheel, the RGB lighting on that, will light up a specific color to let you know the battery status, like a traffic light system, which is pretty nifty and a clever way of doing it, because obviously, generally speaking, unless you have the software open, you don't have any idea of what you are on at the moment. And so that's very useful, a simple little thing. Obviously you are limited in the number of buttons that you can program, but you can choose to go through into another profile. You can set up macros, and you'll see you can record your macros here with ease. So you can set to have a repeating macro if you so wish, toggle or repeat while holding, and set up and record that way. You can do media playback buttons. So you have access to all sorts of other things. Another area that might interest people is the performance settings. I said earlier on that the DPI levels are set in here as standard 400, 800, 1600, 3200, but you can adjust them all the way up to 19,000. So you can see that. So then when I click on the DPI button and end up in the green one, I've now got 19,000, which is ridiculous and very difficult to control. So I wouldn't recommend doing it, but you can. And you'll note that you can add in extra ones as well, so you can even go through even more stages, which is pretty interesting. And those extra colors now appear on the indicator as well. So now I've got yellow and blue and red and green and cyan and purple, And so there you go, you have loads of different options to select what levels of DPI you're on. I'm going to select 1600 for the moment. And then you have your lift-off distance, which you can customize there, and the debounce time. The debounce time is the time it takes to register the click coming back up. So this is used to counter double clicks and prevent that sort of problem. It's not something I've had to play around with in this software at the moment, but perhaps over time you might find it's registering clicks too quickly and you ended up with a double click problem. Here you can adjust that and sort that out, and you can also see you can adjust the polling rate. As default it's set to 1000 Hertz, but you can go between 125, 250, 500 and 1000, so you can set that in here. So overall, as you can see, a very nice mouse with some good customizable settings, plenty of different custom options within the software, including simple things like the addition of multiple DPI stages, macro recording, and that really nifty thing like the battery level check where you can see at a glance, which is very cool. And yeah, certainly a recommended mouse, thoroughly enjoyable, comfortable, easy on the eye, and good fun to play with. This has been the Provoked Prawn. Let me know in the comments if you've got any questions. Thanks for watching.
This has been the Provoked Prawn. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. Hope you found it useful, interesting, hilarious, or all of the above. Be sure to check out the description for other information you might find interesting, and subscribe and watch these other videos as well that I think might be useful to you, and have a great life.